So we are we are starting a very big thing, which we have been thinking of the last couple of years. The Heart Sutra is big because it's actually is a very profound teaching. It's big because I'm not good in this. It's big because you're not good in this. And it's big because this is really, it encompasses so vast of the teaching of the Buddha. And it is big because I think it's happening the first time in Chilliwack. And so it really, there is nothing like big or small. It's just relative. But I think it's a very good start to do it. We just try, okay? We just try our best. So since this is a Mahayana teaching, traditional northern tradition, that means the Chinese tradition. That's why we do it in the Chinese way in the beginning. So no Namo Tassa. What do we do? It's Namo. Yeah. So Namo Pen Shi Shi Zhang Mao Li Fo. Namo, that means I take refuge. Okay. Pen Shi, that means our fundamental. Shi Jia Mao Ni Fo. That means the second Muni Buddha. The last word for, that means Buddha. This is Chinese. So I'm not forcing you to learn Chinese, but yeah, exactly. So, but I would like to start off with this chanting or with this recitation. Okay. So if you would like to do it together with us, you are welcome to do so. If you don't feel comfortable, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's all good. Namo Pen Shi Shi Jia Mao Ni Fo. Namo Pen Shi Shi Jia Mao Ni Fo. Namo Pen Shi Shi Jia Mao Ni Fo. The sutra opening kata, the Dharma infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million kalpas. Now we are able to hear, to study, and to practice. May we fully understand and realize the Tathagata's true teachings. So, this is called Prajnaparamita Sutra. So we all have this copy. I think we should recite together once so that you will be more confused. Because I have presented this teaching to a very good friend of mine who has been a serious practitioner and meditator for over 25, 30 years. And at the end, he just gave it back to me. He said, I don't know what it is talking about. So that's why I want to start confusing you right now. Otherwise, next week, you will be also, don't know what I'm talking about. So at least you start to be confused now. Next week, you'll be less confused. So can we start reciting this sutra? Starting, we don't have to recite the translated by who, okay? But starting from the title. I know it's very difficult to recite together in English because we all sort of like have different speed. It's not like the Chinese, we can use the mokyu, this wooden instrument. So in English, we cannot use the mokyu, but we try to stay tuned with each other, all right? Okay. The Prajnaparamita Tritaya Sutra. Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, when practicing deeply the Prajnaparamita, perceives that all five khandhas are empty and is saved from all suffering and distress. O Sariputra, form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. That which is form is emptiness. That which is emptiness, form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. O Shariputra, all dhammas are marked with emptiness. They do not appear nor disappear, are not tainted nor pure, do not increase or decrease. There is emptiness, no form, no feelings, no perceptions, no impulses, no consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realm of eyes, and no forth until no realm of mind consciousness, no ignorance and also no extinction of it, and so forth until no old age and death and also no extinction of them, no suffering, no origination, no stopping, no path, no cognition, also no attainment. With nothing to attain, the Bodhisattva depends on Prajnaparamita, and the mind is no hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fears exist. Far apart from every perverted view, the Bodhisattva dwells in nirvana. In the three worlds, all Buddhas depend on Prajnaparamita and attain unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. Therefore, know the Prajnaparamita is the great transcendent mantra, is the great bright mantra, is the utmost mantra, is the supreme mantra, which is able to relieve all suffering and is true, not false. So proclaim the Prajnaparamita mantra. Proclaim the mantra that says, Gade Gade, Paragade, Parasam Gade, Bodhe Swaha. Confused enough? Okay, so this Heart Sutra, we so-called in short form, is called the Heart Sutra, which is translated by the Master Xuanzang. Okay, before we go into the Heart Sutra, we really need to spend some time on this translator. Because what we heard, what we can hear, or what we can study with the Mahayana text or Mahayana text, a great proportions actually were being translated and brought back by him from India. So in the mind, in our mind as Chinese Buddhist or Chinese practitioners following the Buddhist path, we actually had great respect and gratitude for this master. And so I would like to actually spend some time, a little bit of time tonight, telling you a little bit of his life history, okay, or biography. So of course, in those days, there were no camera, okay, so no picture of him was available. So this is a depiction of him in the old days, where in the old days people carry things like this, okay, like now in Southeast Asia they carry with baskets and all that. In the old days they carry that, and then with sandals. And you can see his robe is actually quite different from ours, because that is the work robe. Okay, this picture actually is depiction of him when he actually started to travel to go to India. So he was born in 602, okay, year 602, and he lived until 664, which was a very short life considering how long we can live right now. Okay, only 62 years. Of course, if you have time to read about his biography, you would think he already had a long life because of all the hardship that he has actually experienced when he went over to India, and then he stayed, and then he brought back. The trip that he has taken actually was enough to kill us, okay, many times. So in 615, he actually, when he was 13 years old, when he was just 13, and when we were still like having fun, you know, he already started to pursue on a spiritual path. So he took the 10 precepts as a novice monk in some parts of China. And then as when he was 20 years old, he took the full ordination as a bhikkhu. A bhikkhu is a monk, okay, fully ordained monk. Due to the political and social unrest at that time in China, it was in the between the Song dynasty and the Tang dynasty. So he went to Chengdu in Sichuan. Sichuan is where they had a really severe earthquake. How many years ago? 10 plus years ago, Sichuan, and so at that time he became a bhikkhu, and then he later traveled throughout China in search of secret books of the Buddhist teaching, where he really couldn't find any. Then he entered, and then after that he moved to at that time called the capital of China is called Chang'an. At Chang'an he was being very well respected by the emperor at that time, the Emperor Tang Taichung. And when he was there, he actually developed a desire to go to India, because at that time in China, he could hardly find any teachings of the Buddha that he thought was like sufficient or authentic. So he had that mindset, and Tong Taichung actually refused to let him go. At that time, whenever you need to leave the country or to leave the district, you need to get approval. Okay, and so actually in the year of 629, he sneaked away. He sneaked away, and he took the so-called the Silk Road. So you know the Silk Road. It went from China through the southeast. I mean the Asian. What do you call the Afghanistan and all that area. So he traveled through, and in that stretch of area is like Gobi Desert, high mountains, and very rough terrain and all that. So he actually went with a entourage, a whole group of people. Eventually, he was left with actually just himself. And during that travel, he actually almost died many times, and it was being described that he actually had this Heart Sutra in him. Somebody actually gave him this Heart Sutra when he was still in China, a monk, a very old monk, sick monk, whom he attended, and the old monk actually gave him this sutra. So he went with his sutra, bearing the great faith in the Bodhisattva, in the compassionate Bodhisattva, Guanyin Avalokitesvara. So he overcame all those difficulties, and he got to India. He got to India and he traveled. He stayed there for 17 years. He stayed there for 17 years, and then he actually studied a lot, and including in a very famous university, even nowadays, Nananda University. Now, the old Nananda University is a ruin. You can still see the old ruin around there. So after that, he came back to China, which took him 2 years. You see, in those days, horses, they have to keep changing horses in desert. But where are you going to stop for new horses to get like fresh start, right? There's no way. So it took him actually 2 years on foot coming back to China. And he brought back 657 sutras. Yeah, and a lot of figurines, of course. And when he came back, he had a whole troop of people with him. At that time, it was a little bit easier than when he went. So when he came back with the support of the emperor at that time, he set up a large, big translation platform in Chang'an. Now we call it Xi'an. We changed the name. And remember when we talk about the 42 chapters, the White Horse Monastery, remember? It's when actually the sutra actually first arrived into the White Horse Monastery. So at that time, he actually set up this translation bureau in Xi'an, and he started to actually translate with a lot of course, helpers. And he is credited with the translation of some 1,300 articles altogether. And when he came back, he brought back 3 copies of the Indian version of Prajnaparamita Sutra. Maha, remember Maha, but we don't have Maha in here. Okay. So Prajnaparamita Sutra, 3 copies. At that time because he had a whole team of very diligent disciples to translate. And he started translating this Prajnaparamita Sutra. But it's too much work, right? Three versions, 3 different versions. And eventually, actually, a number of his disciples encouraged him to actually render an abridged version. So eventually, he actually succeeded to actually quicken the translation after he had a dream. After he had a dream, to prompt him to actually condense it into an abridged version. So the abridged version of Prajnaparamita Sutra is 600 chapters. It's 600 chapters, but it is a very, very important text. I haven't got a chance to read it, but I have made a vow when I was preparing for this. I said I'm going to study that sutra myself. I have a glimpse of it. I have flipped through it, but I haven't really studied it. But I think I need to do this during my lifetime, at least to study it once, if not twice. So he did succeed in actually doing this abridged complete volume of 600 chapters. So in 646, under the emperor's order at that time, he completed a book called The Great Tang Records on the Western Regions. Tang, that's Tang Dynasty. Okay. And it is actually it's not just a recording of his trip. Actually, that you can call this a book. This book actually tells us, or tell today a lot of scholars, about the history of medieval Central Asia and India. Because in those days, Central Asia and India never record the history of their countries. And so this Great Tang records on the Western regions becomes a very, very precious historical book in all libraries all over the world. And it's being translated into many, many languages. And the first being translated is into French is in 1857, 1200 years later. Can you imagine? 1200 years later. And it's being translated into English by Samuel Beal, who was a very, very famous Buddhist translator in 1884 and 1911. So, and Thomas Waters also at that time, and S.W. Bushell also published in 1905 in London of English version of this historical book. So Venerable Yinzhang not just preserved or not just brought back a big lump of Buddhist teachings, he actually recorded a lot of political and social aspects of the lands that he has traveled. I don't know whether you remember many years ago when was it the Islamic or the I think it was the Islamic who bombed the Afghanistan, the Buddha of Afghanistan. It's called Bamiyan Buddha, huh? The Taliban. Oh, sorry, yeah. The Taliban actually bombed and destroyed the big, huge Buddha, and actually they traced back to Venerable Yinzhang's record. He actually recorded that Buddha statue already at that time. So when I saw that bombing at that time, I was already in Chilliwack. It really hurt. It really hurt because it was like even Venerable Yinzhang has seen that. He has drawn maps of the Bamiyan Buddha, the statue, in his recording, in his records. And then these people actually bomb them, destroy them. But of course, everything is karma, right? It's karma. We cannot control it. But still, it was just so precious. It must be older than like 600 years BCE, right? So, so I think Venerable Xinzhang actually deserve a little bit of our time tonight when we really need to study such a wonderful, profound teaching of the Buddha. So in 664, he actually departed. He was pretty young at that time, but consider the hardship that he had gone through during his travel. And I thought he actually have lived a long life. And he actually left us great deal of precious teachings of the Buddha. So this is the statute. This is the statute in Xi'an. Nowadays, if you go, you can still see it. They make a statue of him, and you can see the pouch that the back is symbolizing that he was carrying back a lot of teachings of the Buddha in his back. Okay, and this is called the Great Goose, the Great Goose, or the Wild Goose Pagoda, where actually the emperor at that time built this. It was 5 stories, but it was being destroyed, and then it was rebuilt after that. So they made 7 stories. It was 5 stories in the beginning. It was built in 652 CE by the emperor in Tang Dynasty, and this is where they store all the figurines, all the precious things, and all the sutras that he brought back. And nowadays, it was still there. It was said that the sculpt relic of Venerable Xuanzang was taken away from this place to other places, like they have said in Japan or in some other place, but nobody can actually verify that. But I think in Japan has really got a part of his sculpt relic in Japan, one of the temple in Japan. So study this, we should be always remember that some of our past teachers, or some of the very diligent practitioners have done a lot in order to preserve such profound teaching for us to be able to study right now. Okay, though this teaching might be too difficult for some of you, or you think it's just too profound, it's just too abstract. It is quite abstract when you when you read that. It's so confusing. It said, what? Emptiness, no form, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue. I do have eyes, I do have ears, and and, and no stopping and no path, no connection, no attainment, so we don't have to practice, right? So, but hopefully with a little bit of understanding further of the content and with the explanation, I hope that you will understand. This is not the perfect translation, not the perfect translation. Thich Nhat Hanh has done a translation recently, I think just a couple of years ago. Uh, but I think I'm so used to this translation, so I find it very difficult to use other translation. But at the end, we can do whatever we want as long as we understand. Okay, so before we really go into this, I want to actually want you to understand how in the traditional Chinese Buddhist way, how we actually start studying sutra, not just to pick it up and then we study. No, there is actually quite a philosophy and quite a really nice step towards it. So let us look at this. There are, oh, sorry, I should have come in animated, but never mind. So there are actually 5 periods of teachings. Let us look at the first period. The first period is called the period of Avatamsaka. This is actually a flower adornment sutra. That's when the Buddha started teaching after his enlightenment for only 21 days. Only 21 days, okay? And that's the first period. And this period is actually he started teaching to those beings who actually have very, very sharp roots and already have these Bodhisattva vows. Even though at that time there are a lot of people with very shallow roots, they could not understand, they would not accept these highest teachings. But there are people, there are these beings who have really sharp roots and who can actually took the teaching from the Buddha. So at that time, the Buddha actually spent 21 days teaching this whole sutra. Okay, then the second period is the Agama period. The Agama period lasted for 12 years of the whole life of the teaching life of the Buddha. In here, the Buddha adapted his teachings to the different potentials of sentient beings, especially for those who are in this mundane world. So consequently, he really did not discuss the really profound and superb Dharma at that time. So agama. The word agama is a Sanskrit term, and it means incomparable. That means nothing can be compared to agama. When you say hi, nothing can be compared. So what about the first period? Nothing can be compared. When you can compare, you can compare an apple to an apple. You cannot compare an orange to an apple, right? So that's why it says incomparable. The first period is for those people with really, really sharp roots. And the second period is for people with different kind of roots. Maybe not as sharp as the first one, because they haven't got that Bodhisattva vow yet. So in this period is where we actually it's called a small vehicle. That means people who are riding on this vehicle are seeking enlightenment for themselves. But for the first one, is those people are seeking enlightenment for themselves, but yet they have this great vow of benefiting other beings. So it's different. Okay. So the third period is Vibhuya period. It lasted 8 years for his teaching. Here, he actually expanded the Mahayana teaching. Okay. And then the fourth period is called the prajna. That means in the word of wisdom, panya, or in Pali terms. Prajna, this is a Sanskrit term. Sanskrit, that means a very literate Indian language, like in the English parallel is Shakespeare. whereas we are speaking the very ordinary English. We call them the Pali in the Indian language. It's Pali, that's spoken Indian language. Okay, Sanskrit is the literate Shakespearean Indian language. Okay, get it? Good. So this period, the fourth period, he taught the doctrines, the principles of emptiness. This is a very, very important era when he spent actually 22 years talking about just wisdom. You see how dumb we are. The Buddha spent 22 years in his 45 years of teaching just on wisdom. But not that we are dumb. It's just that how important it is to have wisdom. Wisdom is not the knowledge that we can actually get from reading or from listening, but it gets from really reflecting, deep reflection. Okay, and then the last period lasted for 8 years before he went into Nibbana, or before he passed. Is called this Dhamma Pandaric or Nirvana stage. Here he taught that vehicle called one Buddha vehicle, or I call it the one vehicle. That means actually it encompasses all the small vehicles, including the vehicles of enlightenment, when sentient beings hear about the Four Noble Truths and they get enlightened, they get fruition. Or people hear about the dependent origination and they attain fruition. Okay. Or people practice on the Bodhisattva vow and they get enlightened, they get fruition. Encompass this last vehicle is called one Buddha vehicle. It encompass all of these vehicles, all of this fruition. So it's a big apple, and there are many small apples inside. 3 small apples inside big apple, if you would like to call it, or big chocolate inside there is little chocolate. I think chocolate is a better analogy, isn't it? So you understand that? It's a little bit, mind boggling, boggling. Yeah, it's difficult to comprehend if you're not used to Mahayana teachings. And even though you are used to Mahayana teachings, these are really, really sometimes, oh, gosh, so complicated. But I just wanted you to know the 5 periods of teachings that actually the Buddha was engaged in. And these 5 periods in the Chinese tradition, it was compared to have 5 flavors, which is wonderful. 5 flavors. And 5 flavors that the first period is the Avatamsaka period is when he actually taught the Bodhisattva. Okay, it's compared to fresh milk, raw milk, which is it edible? Is it good? It's edible. It's good, isn't it? So the Buddha actually taught a simile. He said, there is this big mountain called a snow mountain, which on the slopes of the mountain grow a lot of different variety of grass. And the cows, when they travel on this snow mountain, are so happy because there's so many different types of grass that they can feed on. And they make the cows very healthy and strong. And the milk from these cows is wholesome and rich in nutrients and helps those who drink it to survive better. And similarly, the Buddha said, the Dharma that I'm teaching can nourish our wisdom, can nourish our mind. And thus, this example of the 5 flavors of milk actually appropriately illustrates the 5 stages of the Buddha's teachings. So the first stage is this Avatamsaka period. And it says that it's actually fresh milk. Okay. So when with milk, what comes next? The second stage of milk, cream. Okay, you call it cream. Okay, I call it cream too. So the first stage is this. Why did he only spend 21 days? Because he said ordinary people could neither believe or understand. So if they cannot believe or they cannot understand, remember the Buddha said, my teachings are so profound that he actually refused to go out and teach. Remember that? Because nobody would believe and nobody would practice. So I think at that time he actually taught the Divilokas. The Divilokas who actually have that vows of Bodhisattva. This is how I felt. But so and then the second period is the Agama period, is the cream period. And based on this teaching, those with the capacity of the two vehicles, that means the sound hearer hearing the Four Noble Truths, or the enlightenments who actually hear about the dependent origination and attain fruition, they are able to be transformed after hearing these teachings. So they become arahants. So this is symbolized by the milk being turned into cream. So cream you put into your coffee, but milk you drink, right? In this really modern modern stage of understanding. So then the third period. So what is the third period? The third period is expanded to those people who are not satisfied with just being an arhat and yearned for greater vow of the Mahayana practice. And so when this during this period is actually like an analogy is the cream turned to become a curd, or you could call maybe a cheese, a light cheese. Is that right? A cottage cheese. Is that right? But I think nowadays they add so much thing to it, right? Yeah, they are a whole bunch of things into it. Okay, so that's the third period, and then the fourth period is the pranya period. So it turns into butter. Is that right? Okay, because I'm not. I haven't played with cheese. I play with milk. I asked Eva. I said Eva yesterday. I said, "Are you familiar of this process of milk turning into ghee, a clarified butter?" She said, "Sifu." I said, "Yeah, because the Buddha taught this." She said, "Really?" So she went home and she researched and she sent me a whole bunch of pictures, which I found very confusing. Because those are the modern type of milk processing. It's not what the I mean 2,500 years ago. So this is very different. So the fourth period is really turning into butter. That means those people who have received the teaching expounded by the teacher became very harmonized and gradually obtained the benefits of this distinctive doctrine. That means the infinite Dharma, or we call the Mahayana Dharma. And then the fifth period is the Nirvana period. That means the last period is what you call the ghee. Is a ghee, Ghee, or we call clarified butter. In Chinese, it's called Tai Wu. That's why it's Tai Wu Gun Dang Zhou. That is the clarified butter. Okay, so in this period, which was how many years? Good. 8 years. 8 years. He actually taught the Lotus Sutra, one of my favorite sutra. Wonderful sutra. There's so many stories. Actually, all of them are stories. But those are very profound stories, very difficult to understand. Not stories. It's really stories. Very difficult to understand, but it's wonderful stories. And then also, he actually taught the Nibbana Sutra. And this is where actually he gave a complete teaching, referred to the doctrine of middle path, and non-obstruction of our mind. And this is called the one Buddha vehicle here at this stage. And this is like analogous to like turning the the cook or the mature curd into clarified butter or the ghee. And from what actually ever gave me from the lady who was making the ghee, actually I read through the whole article, and she said nowadays it's n- very difficult to actually make really good purified butter because the milk nowadays is so different. So you needed to add things into it before you actually have this jar of, you think it's honey, I think it's honey, but it's really, huh? Yeah, it's golden color. I think it melts, it smells very good. I don't know whether the people in Tibet they're using this kind of ghee all the time. I don't know whether they have to add all those things, but yak milk, so it's different, huh? Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, we will get to taste it one day if we go traveling to Tibet. The one last place I want to go. uh, anyway, so this is the so these are the five flavors. So the Heart Sutra, the Heart Sutra is actually being taught in the is compared to the fourth period. In the fourth period, it's because the fourth period he actually taught the he taught the Panya. Okay, so these five flavors, although we would like to try, we would like to be able to digest all these five, but nevertheless, we can't because every one of us has different potential. Some may be able to understand in the first period of the teachings of the first period, or some may be able to understand the teachings from the second period, or being very drawn to the second period, the teachings of the second period, or some may be very drawn to the teachings of the fifth period. Nobody knows. So you need to really experience yourself, okay, and come from your experience. Hey, I really understand this a lot better than what I understand in the other teachings. I've come a long way. I started in the Mahayana tradition way back, 30 years ago, and I traveled. I mean, I experienced, which I did not have any affinity at that time towards the Mahayana teaching, except the Lotus Sutra and the Diamond Sutra. But the Diamond Sutra was so difficult to understand. I just couldn't get a hold of myself onto the Diamond Sutra. But when I came here, I had this wonderful chance of studying the agamas, the small vehicle, and I just loved this. The Nikayas, the Theravadan tradition. I just loved it. And now, after spending so many years in this Nikayas, when I come back lately in the past five years or so, I come back to study the Mahayana. I understand so much now. I understand so much better. and it's so fascinating now. And I don't have any repulsion towards any Mahayana teachings anymore. I mean, I did not have any repulsion, rejection towards it, but I just don't. I didn't understand. When you don't understand, you're not drawn to it, right? And when you're not drawn to it, you can practice. So, but after so many years of studying the Nikayas, I come back to Mahayana. I appreciated this profound teaching so much, and it nourished me so well. Now, so we can start off liking the milk or not taking the cheese in, but don't reject the cheese. Put it aside and go on and go on and go on. Eventually, you come back, you think, wow, the cheese is so nice. I can have it and I can digest it and I can utilize it. So it's actually so that's why it's important when you share with people, don't impose your own onto others. You should try this and you should do this and you should do this. No, 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 the practice that you do is not good. No, 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 it's not. Yeah, no, no, I don't think it's good. I like this. Every one of us has different potential. We don't know which seeds are ripening right now. So go for those ripened seeds and cultivate those seeds. When those are being cultivated, you nourish the other seeds, and those seeds will become ripened, mature. You see? So nothing is wasted. No one step is wasted. Don't worry, but keep trying. Okay? You don't have to rush, but you have to be fast. Say that again, please.
I said just think about some of the other lessons that took, very decent time to get through.
Yeah, I know. But at least, at least we still have this life uh, to go through. So, so the important point in this whole analogy is different people can digest different kind of milk or milk products at different time according to his or own ability and exposure. So don't impose and don't force others or don't force yourself to go on this path if you find this path really you cannot resonate, then just go on to another path. Okay. But this is a very the 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 path of Bodhisattva, the first period, the Bodhisattva path is a very, very important path. And I remember when I started practicing this Vipassana, I hesitated because it's not in our tradition, in my teacher's tradition, because my teacher, my sifu, was a very renowned chant master. So when I practiced this, I I went home. I went back to Hong Kong, and I told him what I'm practicing now, and he just kept quiet. He did not say anything. And I know my teacher. When he did not say anything, that means he approved. But all my sangha members around me at that time pointed a finger at me. You should not do this. You should not practice it. You are not following your sifu's teaching. Blah 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 blah. So I got fingers pointing at me, arrows pinch, uh, all sides went into me. So I had a very strong armor around me, and I said, okay. I did not say anything. I kept practicing, and one day, I don't know whether you heard this story, but if you have heard this story, just pretend that you haven't heard it, and this is the first time you hear it, okay? And still laugh. So one day, my fellow nun, one of my really good friends from Seattle, she came visit me, and she brought me this magazine, which was published by her hometown nunnery in Taiwan. a very well a magazine, a very well organized Buddhist magazine. And she said, I said, wow, Venerable Jendi, you came all the way to Seattle from Seattle to come and visit me. What's the big thing? She said, oh, there's a big thing for you, because she knew what I was worrying about, the practice that I had adopted. And she said, I wanted you to read this. I said, your magazine? This magazine? Yeah. I said, we got it every other month. She said, yeah, but I want you to read this edition this time. I said, you came all that way? She said, yes. Just, flip over. So she had already bookmarked it. So I flip over. I said, oh, I said, Sifu. My Sifu was one in the picture. The picture was there. But at that time, my Sifu was very ill. He was in hospital for 9 months. But he was invited it was in February. He was invited to come out to a nuns retreat, which lasted for 1 month, where they actually studied the Vinaya, the precepts, the Bhikkhuni precepts. And they invited my Sifu to go and give a teaching. So my Sifu went with all the tubes, and then with the oxygen and everything. He went to this retreat, and he gave a teaching. Of course, they really detailedly recorded the teaching, but at the end, that was the essence of the teaching there. And just three, I should have written it down, just 3 verses. He said, let the precept be your teacher. 以戒为师. Let the precept be your teacher. 修四念住. Practice the 4 Satipatthana. 行菩薩道. Walk on the Bodhisattva path. I looked at it. I literally cried. Why? My teacher was a Chan master. I have, in the days that I had spent with him, I never heard him talking about the 4 foundations of meditation. That means the Satipatthana. Though the 4 Satipatthana also is a very strong foundation in some of the meditative sects in the Chinese Mahayana tradition. But I have never heard him talking about this. But he literally publicly say that. And somehow he probably knew that Venerable Jendi and me are good friends, and Venerable Jendi knew that I was worried about my own practice at that time, and he actually publicly announced, this is all right to practice. You go ahead. So everyone in my sangha, all my fellow nuns, all my fellow monks, just kept quiet. So I kept quiet too. And I kept practicing the 4 Satipatthanas. So, but remember, it's very important, those 3 verses, it's not just the 4 Satipatthanas. The first is, let the precept, Sila, be your teacher. That means your teacher is constantly with you when you are alive. The second is that's the second step, is the practice of meditation. But the very, very important step is the third part, is the walk on the Bodhisattva path. What is the Bodhisattva path? That means you vow to liberate all the sentient beings from sufferings, not just your own. Okay, that's you can give up your whole life for the well-beings of other sentient beings. That's the last part, which is the most important. So I have confused you enough tonight. I think I can only do that much. The categorization of sutra, we have to start next week. Okay, so What's that to announce? A work day this Sunday work day. So once a month work day, we welcome volunteers to come and help to clean or whatever chores that we have. And then what else?
Chinese New Year.
Oh, Chinese New Year. What's about Chinese New Year?
Friday, February 16th.
You see, she's better than me. Remember the dates?
And Sunday, February 18th. Registration will be up soon. It'll be on Facebook. And
Chinese New Year, we have chanting and we have offerings. Huh? And the third day of Chinese New Year, we have this offering to Divi Locus. Yeah. Okay. So good to start off the new year with the Heart Sutra. So let us dedicate our merits. We bring our attention back to this body, constantly being aware. And we allow this good thought to arise on our mind for all the benefits that I gather tonight. May I share with all beings, visible, invisible, human, non-human, big or small, far or near. May they be free of enmity. May they be free of miseries. May they start to live in a world with brightness, warmth, and experience compassionate love, and be peaceful and be happy. May we wish more and more people will encounter the words of the Buddha, to study, to practice, and to liberate themselves from their own entanglements, and be truly free and happy and at peace. Good.